We are now looking out on the other side of the cabins, looking out onto the high ground, and behind me is a cannon which was a 3-pounder. If you notice that where the cannon's pointed, it's actually pointed in the wrong direction. When Valley Forge was a state park and it became a national park in 1976, in 1976 for the bicentennial, this great state of Pennsylvania gave the park to the National Park Service as a gift. The National Park Service came in here right before the bicentennial, and the historians immediately said all the cannons in this park are faced the wrong way. They were all facing Reading. They should be facing Philadelphia. So they had to come in, turn all the cannons around, and back in that time period, there was cannonballs welded to the bottom of each cannon. When it became a federal park and more people started coming in here, the Park Service began to see that these cannonballs started to disappear because Americans love to steal things from national parks, so they took all the cannonballs out. So this is a 3-pounder. Washington also had 8-pounders, 12-pounders, some 16 and some 24, and it's just the size of the cannonball. Soldiers marched shoulder to shoulder because the muskets were very inaccurate. When you had an army marching at you, you faced your cannons down into the ground, so the cannonball would go out and skip along the ground like you're skipping a rock, and it would take out the men. It's almost like human bowling. And so when there was a hole in the line, they would simply close up the line and continue to march forward. And all the men were always told, if you see a cannonball coming at you, don't try to stop it. It's going to take your arm or your leg off, which several times we see that happening. So the 3-pounders were lined up to fire out on an angle that they would hit and then skip along the ground and take men out. If the army got within 100 yards or so, they would put grape shot in the 3-pounders or the 8-pounders, and it's a bag full of steel balls about the size of a golf ball. And it was a really thin-skinned bag that they would tie rope thread all around the balls, and it looked like giant grape shot. They would fire that out, and those balls would go out, dispersed all over the place, and they would go right through you. If you were within 50 to 30 yards away, they would put canisters in these cannons, about the size of a coffee can, with 700 ball bearings, about the size of a BB, and they would fire that out, and it would literally, within 20 yards, it would probably take out somewhere between 35 and 45 men. It would just chew them up. And then if you got past the cannons, the grape shot, the canister, the cannonballs, they would charge at you with the bayonets. And the bayonet was the weapon of mass destruction of the day. It's 18 inches long. It's a blunt point. It goes back to about 1.5 inches. It's triangular. So if someone is stuck with a bayonet, it's going to hurt. And when you go to pull it out of a body, you actually have to wiggle it because the body closes in on it. So they have to jiggle it to pull it out. You're going to get bayoneted 2 or 3 times. The reason it was triangular, because the human body will close on 2 sides of a wound. It can't close on 3 sides. You feared the bayonet. That was such a fearsome weapon. It was actually outlawed by World War I. Unfortunately, folks, human beings do something really well, creating weapons to kill each other. And the cannons and the bayonets and everything else they were using were tremendously devastating these armies. And even in the next war, the Civil War, they're still using the same military strategy, but now the weapons have become so much more accurate. So this is the cannons. You're facing Philadelphia, and then we can't see it because of the growth. You put redoubts, which it's a French word for forts, on either side of your lines, so you cannot get flanked. So we start here on the left with the Muhlenberg line. We go up all the way a mile Pennsylvania line where General Wayne had the Pennsylvania troops, and this is the outer line, and this is where the majority of men were for the winter of 77 and 78.